microphone's wrong. Right. So we pull that over here. This should start working. Morning, Amal. How are you doing? How are things? My apologies for being a few minutes. I needed a cup of tea. Hope everything looks good. This streaming thing is interesting because you always end up changing something even when you think you haven't changed anything. So I have to check the microphone every day. I have to check the camera. The camera I have to go through a little game with just to get it to run. I have to start one piece of software. It's there is I don't think without spending significant money that there is a true switch it on stream sort of solution. There's always something you have to change if you want to use the equipment normally. Sorry. Okay. So today I'm gonna kind of look. So yesterday we left off with the work items, the tests, and I was adding the unit tests around adding a ticket. So when a ticket is added, right, the ticket has a review date, the ticket has an added date, the ticket has customer name, and the ticket has a description. Unfortunately, it did trigger me to create the other unit tests around the other things because obviously originally ticket had title, description, and that was it. Now I've added customer name instead of title, and I've added a review date, and I also added an added date on there so that I know that I'm tracking that. So I went ahead and created the other tests for the other pieces. So the update case. So when I update, the review date has changed. So if I change that, the date added remains unchanged. The customer name has changed, the description has changed, the last updated is set. So this should be different. And I don't want to bring in fluent assertions if I don't like the style of fluent assertions, right? So I want my style to be it did. So assert this is true, assert this is true. So I decided to create an extension method just for now. Well, not an extension, an actual class for is, which fits better with the way I'm wording things. Yes, it's kind of reinventing a wheel because obviously I am um, doing something that is available in another library, but it does at least benefit me for now and keeps within my style, which I think is a bit more important here. So we have ticket is added, ticket is updated, and deleting a ticket. If we try to delete a ticket and it doesn't exist, so the ID doesn't exist, we should return a not found. And if we do, and it is there, then we should mark it as deleted. So the unit testing structure is in place. But for the enter support ticket feature, which is actually what we're focused on here, that isn't the end. So if I look back at the story, right, the story states, as a product owner, I need to be able to capture a ticket to record a support issue. The issue will have a customer name, could be a person or a company, free text, maximum 100 characters, a description of the issue free text, maximum 100 characters, and an expected review date, right? So we have some requirements here that I haven't captured yet because the add new support ticket functionality just straight up adds. So now we get into kind of validation, and this started to test me. So I figured this was a good place to stop last night and kind of regroup today on stream, because I think this is something that we kind of all have to do, and we'll all do in different ways. We'll follow different patterns, and I wanted to share my thoughts on it so far because I don't do right? In day to day, validation is always something that is, you know, I've done it ad hoc. And right now, because I'm trying to build a platform and I'm trying to work with this platform on a daily basis, I want to make sure that I'm consistent going forward. So what I did is I started to review different opinions, and I started thinking through what my own thoughts on this were. So obviously, there's one layer here. We could do max length 100. We could do max length 500, right? We can say required. We can say required, right? And here we can say this is a required field, right? So what will happen there is ASP.NET's validation layer will intercept that, and it will apply its own rules as to doing that. So if I run this now, I have a test kind of configured because I was validating stuff yesterday, right? So if I run this and hit send, then I should get ASP.NET trigger it, right? Actually, I might get, yeah, the field customer name must be a string or array type with a maximum length of 100, right? So this is ASP.NET's layer. But the challenge with doing it that way is you don't have that validation on here. So if I was to reuse the add new support ticket feature, right? If there was I want to be able to add a new support ticket from this this screen, and it populates this differently, right? The requirements change. Or I could add a new support ticket because of an automated process. So that's probably more likely the scenario, right? Not another screen, because another screen would use the same API endpoint. Another process which adds support tickets. Let's say I import or I migrate from something, and I want to use this feature, right? I want to use the add new support ticket feature to actually register these things. So at that point, that validation has to get copied and pasted beyond here, right? So the other model or whatever has to be done. Otherwise, we have this being able to be unguarded, and you can just straight up add a ticket. So I started looking around on what people thought, and I came across Nick Chapsis. I believe I'm pronouncing his name right there, Chapsis. And he was, I think 7 months ago, he was kind of on a using Mediator R with validation, which is kind of funny because around the same time frame, he released a video saying that's not the best Mediator implementation. The other one is. So it is kind of amusing to me. That must be difficult making content and having to then flip and say, oh no, well that other implementation is not as good as it should be. But what he introduced was in that video was using pre-processors or pipeline behaviors inside of Mediator to kind of intercept the request. So no matter who invokes the command, it is validated. So I kind of like that approach and I wanted to do it. And then I started writing the code and thinking, I hope the new framework actually supports it. And it kind of does, right? So, well, it does. It does support it in the same way. So I introduced fluent validation. So I added fluent validation in here. And I created a validator for the new support ticket command. One of the points thoughts I had here was, right, whether I'm updating or adding, this is the same, which I'm not too certain, because those rules are slightly reusable, but I can't reuse them when I'm hard coding this here. But then that's got to be common, right? Because the validators are working against the handlers. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. Right. Now, I started building this specifically to that case. And then I looked at the example code and realized that what they were doing was this. This is basically a fluent validation preprocessor. So a preprocessor is just an implementation of a pipeline behavior in Mediator, and it's the same thing in Mediator R and Mediator, right? And what this does is this gets added at this level, right? So I add Mediator and I add a singleton of a pipeline behavior of a fluent validation preprocessor. And then I have to add my validators in. That we'll come back around on. There's a way of doing that that doesn't revolve around registering every single one manually. So now this kind of moves to there, right? And what I did is added this iValidate interface because this should only pick up on messages that are iValidate, right? If I don't have a validator in front, it shouldn't intercept that. Whereas this would actually intercept everything and trying to inject a validator for everything and then break. So yeah, so let's do it that way. Let's refactor this, adjust namespaces, yeah, correct all that. So now if I run this, and you kind of saw it coming into the stream, but if I run this now, and try and add a ticket again, I should get an exception. Right, so fluent validation, validation failed, customer name, the length of customer name must be 100 characters or fewer, you entered 110. Severity, error. Review date must not be empty, error. Right? Review date must be greater than 12/8, right? Because you're not going to review it today. Although that is a prime example of a requirement that should be covered, right? An expected review date, right? So when we're talking about the stories, an expected review date, the review date must be after today, right? So that is a requirement that should be captured and documented. So even if you start working on this story, that's not a difficult one to come back over, right? So that is something that I would say you should make sure that you follow up with and then have the PM add that requirement and maybe capture that conversation, right? Because it's worth capturing and recording that that was added after the fact, but also that it is there. Okay, so this isn't great, but it is now a validator. There are other ways of dealing with this, right? Because we can actually we could now, because we've created a validator, we always have the validator. We could add it in here as well. We could inject it in here and do that rejection from within here and return a clean result. But I don't know if that's necessary. I think doing it this way actually feels pretty good because it's guarded. It doesn't clutter this code, and especially considering my recent focus upon single responsibility and trying to break out those sagas for the sole purpose of not wanting to do too much in any single handler. This kind of fits, right? It does work. But the challenge will be, what do I unit test here, right? Do I unit test the validator? Do I need a unit test around the validation? Right? I can't write tests that say when adding a ticket and the name is greater than, because I did go down that path, by the way. I created some unit tests that were based upon the validation inside, but then that gets very cluttered. So I'm open to opinions on this, absolutely, because I do want to know if anyone does things differently or how they do them. It would be interesting to know. Good morning, Dota. How are you doing? Forgot to turn the camera on to check on the woofs. Pretty good. Good to hear. When's your unit testing thing coming up? Or have you already talked about that with was discussing how to bill while contracting with AI. We have very different experiences. Oh, next year. Okay. You know, it's the one area I've never ventured into contracting. Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah. Won't be for a while due to the holidays. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't advise it if you're a big company. That's a better arrangement. Yeah, contracting always. I again, I think it's a little bit of the imposter syndrome. I think it's definitely. I don't consider myself good enough to sell what I can do effectively. I know I can code. I'm not doubting that, but I don't consider myself like on a high tier um, enough that I could contract that out. So I've never had the confidence to even venture into that path. I think it only makes sense at the start of your career or when you've been extremely good. Yeah. If you can build a house. Yeah. Question was, how do you get the work? Yeah. I mean, again, that's the challenge, right? Like, I'm confident I can develop, right? I'm not saying that I'm not a competent developer, right? I fully believe myself to be competent enough. I'm stood talking to people and telling them, here's what I do, here's my thoughts, right? So I clearly have that confidence, but actually standing in front of someone, because I don't, if you spend any amount of time here, you know that I'm not big on talking about the pattern or the style or the way the code's written or the underlying components enough, because I just don't study them in that way. Um, so I've never really felt confident with chasing the whole contracting piece. I have started putting some thought to offering some level of mentoring though, like one on one, with junior developers and things to spend some time, do some review sort of stuff. Kind of what prompted my little poll opinion in the stream in the chat the other day in Discord. But yeah, that's about as confident as I get. I wonder if I could trick my coworker into signing up for that. So yeah, it's kind of that's been going through my mind because I think that I do have enough to offer, um, in terms of clean coding, in terms of software design, in terms of actual practical development. I think there's something there that I could help um, build some skill sets. But for now, get me on stream. Um, I think he's been coding 5 years professionally with a bunch of testing experience in there too. Yeah, but I mean, as you've witnessed, right? Just 5 years does not necessarily mean if you don't have the support and a nurturing environment in terms of building that skill set. It's very easy as a developer to fall into a pattern of just get it done, and that doesn't lend itself to good skills, right? So time really does mean nothing in terms of like you study software development more than anybody I've ever met, right? You like to know the whys, the wheres, you like to analyze and you like to challenge. And that is a skill set unto itself, right? You realize when you're wrong, you realize that you've got to adapt, you change, you learn, you grow. So your skills, even though you haven't had 10, 15, 20 years in development, are stronger than a lot of people who've had the same amount of time as you in the job. So time doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's that exposure to people that can help you evolve, right? And you've gone and chased those opportunities in some respects, right? You've followed different developers, you've looked at different opinions. You know, you'll I would imagine at this point you've picked some things from me that you like and dislike, and some things from Ted that you like and dislike, and some things from the other developers that have a little bit more experience. And you've taken those things and you've learned and grown. So that's what software development should be about, right? It shouldn't be about one person knows all. It should be about a shared knowledge. I mean, that's what open source is, right? It's built on this concept of we can work together to build good things. So time on a job just means you've endured. If you've not had that experience to learn, yeah, um, it's a that opportunity. I've been lucky enough. Grumpy, yeah, he's his own brand of sarcasm and wit, but experience and pragmatism as well. He is the one that looks like the stereotypical old school programmer more than most, but he's the one that is pretty much the most pragmatic, right? So, but he's also realistic in that he knows sometimes you just got to get stuff done, and things aren't going to be as good as you want them no matter what. So it's a balance. But again, you know, I have been considering the whole mentoring thing, kind of an hour, 2 hours a week or something. Sit down, review effort, talk through ideas, show some different ways of doing things on actual code examples, that sort of stuff. I've been considering offering it, but obviously I'd have to kind of plan that out. With Ted, I do the ensembling for a few hours a week. I try to get that as much as possible. Yeah. Individual coaching is very sporadic for me with him, not even once a month. Right. But Ted has a wealth of experience in different ways than I do, right? I have, yeah, it's funny how we all evolve, right? I'm kind of the summation of all the opinions and the self learning. Ted has really, because he's worked for a long time. Um, yeah, this past year I only did that one time. Yeah, so yeah, my experience has been small to medium business, and you know, growing. Most of the companies I work for have grown very fast beyond small. So yeah, I haven't focused on the coaching aspect. Again, the the imposter syndrome, right? That stopped me um, from really pushing myself to try and say, "Hey, I know what I'm doing here. Can I help you?" Right? That's really held me back a lot throughout my career. Has been in dev since 1995. I was 15 years old. Yeah, I'm 4 years behind him in that one. But again, those different experiences they come together. They give different perspectives, different aspects. So you know, it's I would say that if you're a junior developer, if you're a developer with only a few years experience, do not worry. Um, do not think that you have to know it all. Just keep learning, keep growing. What would be your specialty area? Ted is obviously testing an OOP. I don't know. What would you say would be my specialty area? I'd be interested to know if you felt that there was one. You could now either offend me Now I'm interested. I'll let the curse word go. Haha. I should have seen this question coming. Microservices, maybe. I don't know. E.g., system design. That's a weakness of mine. Doesn't close very easily. That was a weird bug there. So, if I'm being honest, I wouldn't say I have a speciality. I think I'm a generalist. I like to, I like system design in so much as I like being able to think about the flow, right? I like to be able to consider all those different opinions and say, hey, here's again the pragmatism, right? I've really latched onto the pragmatic aspect of software development in that sometimes things are not as clean cut as people want them to be, right? So I think my speciality is my generality. I'm not super strong at unit testing. I'm not super strong at object oriented programming. I'm not super strong at um, databases. I'm not super strong in any area, but I can competently put a system together and I can describe what I'm doing and I can have open discussion about why I might want to do something. So I think my approach to software development is probably my strength, if I'm being honest about how I feel. So yeah, microservices and system design is something I'm passionate about. Is it something I'm going to be able to tell you, hey, use this and use this, and this is this design and this is this design, etc.? Probably not. But I can show you. I can actually make it. I can actually code it, um, and I can make it again practical, right? So again, um, it'd be hard to work into a side project, or I've never done it. Yeah, I guess this project is an example of system design. Yeah, it is, right? And again, it's a So the thing to remember about this project is I did not go, okay, let me look up, uh, the, when I'm off stream, I have a 4K monitor to the right, right? Obviously, I do not want to stream in 4K. Come on in, Sarav. How are you? I'm not strong on anything. I very much doubt that. I very much doubt that. If you're here, you are, and you've continued to be here, you are interested in this entire topic, right? So you're interested in learning. So you're chasing getting better at different things, or you know better and you're just not confident in that. But you will be strong. Or there's or if you can't identify that, like I just said, I'm more of a generalist. I would say, what are you passionate about? What when you get to write the code, what do you enjoy doing? That's what I'd ask yourself there. So anyway, um, I'm gonna get distracted too quickly. That was Nick Chapsis's video on clean validation that I had up there. So if we go like architecture, software architecture, right? Interested, but I'm not great at coding. How long have you been a developer? So on the topic of, like you said, I guess this project is a system design thing, right? So I didn't go onto Google and look up um, what software architecture is. I didn't look up architectural patterns, right? And we know where I'm heading, I would assume, right? Um, wow, the fact that you have to find books first is kind of crazy, right? I didn't look up documentation on how to design a system. I didn't look up clean code, clean architecture, hexagonal design, etc. What I did is went at the application, and this probably comes from my background in more vertical slices, right? In terms of there is the front end, there is the API, there is the logic, there is the database, etc. Right? So that probably this probably evolved from that anyway. it just happens to fit, right? Oftentimes what you'll do is you'll be working in code and find that it actually does fit a pattern. We just didn't see it, right? So, and I kind of like doing that. So I deliberately name the projects in a certain way to help myself explain what I'm working on and where the pieces lie. So yeah, it is kind of an example of that, in that I'm evolving. I'm just trying to learn the best way for me and what fits, and I'm willing to clean it and change it because it is important to be able to change your code. So 5 years. So what sort of coding have you done, Sarav? So for those in the Twitch channel, there is also a YouTube stream, and that is where I am talking as well. So I'm trying to make sure I'm reading out. Yeah. No worries, Dota. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So yeah, this project is very much evolutionary. It will identify problems as we go. Right? I will find failings of it. There'll be all sorts of issues, but yeah. At work, I don't do a lot of coding. More of a deployment management. Ooh, okay. So you're developing on in your spare time for the most part. So in that case, what I would suggest is, if you are working on spare project time, is find something you're passionate about that is not the software, right? Find something that you enjoy doing. So for me, and anyone who's been in this stream for a long time will know that I love video games, right? And I have a collection of video games, which if you look at the image, I don't like looking at me. The games are up behind me, right? They're on the shelves all over the walls of the games. So a lot of what I've spent time on is writing software to track the games. Well, I think I'm on version like 10 of trying to do that, right? Because I still haven't found the solution that works well for me. But every time I start a project, I don't see it as a failure if I don't complete the project. I see it as an opportunity to learn. So if I came out of a project, and even your day to day, right? If you're working on something and you're asked to do something and it isn't the greatest of pieces of work, isn't the most glamorous, right? Or it gets cancelled, which is the worst part, right? That's always heartbreaking if you've worked on something for months and months and months, and all of a sudden it's like, no, we don't want that anymore. It's cancelled, right? Don't get disheartened by that. Don't get downtrodden by that. Look at what you learned along the way, and treat every project as an exercise in learning, right? You will grow, right? That's exactly what I do, right? I just treat every project as if I'm learning something, right? And if I don't come out of a project, if ever I get to the point where I'm like, yes, this is how you write an application, here's what you do this, I hope people call me out for it, because I hope it's obvious that I don't ever say, this is what you do, right? I say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try this. I don't like that. Let's change that, right? I'm not holding to someone's expectation of how software should be written. I'm holding to my expectations. So, evolve, grow, and don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. Starting coding challenges from John Cricket, but I'm lost how to start and design a solution. Got you, which is why you mentioned that before. So let me take a look. I'm not going to start anything. I'm not going to divert the stream to this right now, but John Cricket coding challenges. No thanks. I don't know how to sign up. Okay, so gotcha. So maybe this is a fun stream one day, right? Maybe we tackle something, right, that I haven't tackled before. So yeah, if that would help, I will happily analyze some of these and try and build a stream around one of these. But some of these might be a little bit difficult, right? Don't don't think you have to start on something that is productive, right? Right, okay. Step 3, step 4. Nice. Okay. So, yeah, I think I'll pick out a few and offer them in the Discord. Have you joined the Discord yet? Um, those that haven't, I don't remember seeing your name appear in the Discord, but I'll post a few in the Discord maybe, and give some options. Yeah, I'll be happy to do something like this. You know, but again, you don't have to start with something that's kind of defined like this, right? You don't have to start with a clean design, right? You need to start with. Actually, I need to remember that. Documents. No, let's not do that in there right this second. This name is too long. We'll put that there for right this second. That'll remind me. Right. Software development is all about evolution, right? Or progression, right? It's about improving and improving and getting, like, optimization is the art of taking what you've done previously and making it better, right? Yeah, I'll analyze it and I'll arrange a stream and I'll put some options in the chat so that it's not my choice. I don't want to play to a strength, right? That's the point. So maybe I fail, right? So yeah, join the Discord. I think that might have been you joining, but I forget that I've got Discord on the dev machine normally as well, so I have to make sure I close it during the stream. So yeah, absolutely. So anyway, let's I've cycled away from what I started to do on the stream, and I want to make sure that I get this piece done while I'm on stream. So fluent validation. So we've created this preprocessor. Right now it's going to live here, but there's no need for this to live in this project, right? Nice. So I probably want to move this out. So let's talk about that part. So sometimes there are pieces that do span across your application, right? They are used everywhere, they're used in multiple places, and you cannot avoid it. So what do you do? So what I've tended to do is create a shared folder and put things that are shared in there. So these extensions help me build my applications, right? They aren't necessarily library worthy in so much as they do things specifically for me, or they do something that might exist but I don't want to go and find. So extension services. This is what this is doing is actually putting tasks around a background service. So it will fire off multiple services. So I don't have to write multiple background services and add them, because actually there's some weird behavior with that I didn't want to dig into. But this will go and launch multiple background services, right? So it will actually start them, right? And this is built for the Kafka pieces, right? For me. And then I have the extensions for adding the hosted services, and this is again a wrapper, and it adds the multi-service wrapper, and there's configuration, etc. So this was me wanting. So the reason I built this piece is because what I wanted to do is be able to deploy a set of services into Kubernetes, and when I'm running it locally, run all of them in one instance, but when I run it remotely, run them individually, right? So that I can actually scale up individual services. So if I have 5 consumers, when I'm running locally, I don't care if those 5 consumers are a second or 2 behind, right? That's not going to matter to me. But when I put it into production, I want that service to be individual to that instance of the service, right? So that's the multi-service wrapper. So that's not really a useful library, but it does what I need to do. So that's why it's an extension. Identity. This is just to make sure I can get tenant identifier, right? So this gives me the extension so that I can add it into all the projects that need to get the claim principal, and I now can pull the tenant identifier out. It's very specific to my case, but it is needed across all the layers. Well, across all the API layers. I don't like passing user down into the application, right? The concept of user is an API level thing with permissions, etc. The application doesn't know about the user, and anything it needs to know about the user should be passed down to it from the API layer, I believe, because these should be agnostic. The console extensions, this allows me to bind up the console configuration. So this console is what I'm using for console mixed with Ocelot is what I'm using for the API gateway. So console is an actual key value store and service monitor. And Ocelot is an API gateway that channels it all through, and it uses console for its configuration. And then I can see all the services going through in the console dashboard. Kubernetes replaces some of this feature if I want it to, but I actually ended up, when I did the Kubernetes install, I installed it in there. And then the Auth0 extensions, this is just wrapping up some of the configuration around the Auth0 pieces so that I don't have to keep repeating it, API, 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 etc. Right? So it's okay to have these. And then the shared folder is, at this point, a little bit less useful because there's not as much stuff in here that I need anymore. I actually think I don't need that. Yes, I did just find out if I needed it by doing that. Repository extensions needs it. Ah, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. Or do I? Ah, I still use that. There we go. Uh, when ticket is added, add new support ticket. Let's just put those pieces back. So that's a piece of work that needs to be done. This is the type of story I don't like writing, right? As a developer, I need to I don't want to write it that way. I'm gonna write it repositories not all using RDALIS specification. So I don't want to lose track of that, right? So I need to move. I need to do some work on those to get rid of those pieces. Yeah, that should be rolled back. Yeah, that's fine. But either way, the shared project. So my point was the shared project. So now when I'm looking at this, not tenant management, work items, when I'm looking at this Fluent validation preprocessor, where does that live, right? What does that do? So I'm going to do it in for right now, I'm going to open an Explorer. I just put it all in source. So everything's in source right now, so that's okay. I'm going to create an extensions class library, source, extensions, validation. Yeah, that's great. Extensions validation. Let's add Fluent validation. We're going to add dependency injection. What we're going to do is we're going to create a method that adds that in, and then we can reuse it in other places, right? So what we're going to do is add a service collection extensions. Again, I'm playing with this naming convention, right? Because I'm continually trying to figure out the right way to name things. And what I mean by that is, if you're reading some code and you go and you write some code, and then 20 minutes later you come back and you find a typo, right? You find it's not a typo, it's and I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was working on some stuff and I called the method, I called the object that I was working with state, and I referred to it as get state in the function. But then when I was referring to it in another piece of code, I wrote get status because I didn't have IntelliSense, right? So I instinctively went to get status, and I did it again and again and again. So that was me saying that maybe I didn't think of it as state. Maybe I thought of that as status. Right? So I questioned myself about that, right? The fact that I made the easy mistake and I kept making the mistake of calling it status. Why did I call it status now, and why did I call it state originally? Well, it was actually going to be the status, the status, I'm right in the middle. It's going to be the status of the process. So it was either stopped, started, running. So that is kind of state, but it's also a status. So how do I feel about those things? And again, it doesn't matter what you would call it. It doesn't matter what someone else would call it. The people working in the code are the ones that have to deal with it. So they're the ones that have to make the decision. And it might seem trivial, but it could make the difference in how you find the code. Because if you think of it in one pattern, if you think of it in one way, and I call this, let's say I call this Fluent extensions or Fluent validation extensions, right? I might find it that way, right? But if I look up service collection extensions, I can see everywhere where I've created extensions, right? And I can do that in a project and know that it's there and this is extending dependency injection. So I'm starting to establish a pattern, right? It's not perfect. Again, like the iRepository stuff, right? Those were there because initially I started writing my own repositories. Then I started investigating different code, and I wasn't afraid to rip out some pieces, but I was clearly afraid to rip out all the pieces. So I still need to go back and do that refactoring. Otherwise, a future developer, right, who's going to work on this amazing multi-billion-dollar platform that I'm dreaming of, right? Another developer in the future might recreate something that already exists, or might take my implementation of iRepository and use that and build a whole load of code off, which then adds to the lie in the system that this exists, because it doesn't. It shouldn't exist. It should be discarded, right? So you should never be afraid to remove code, because it can be damaging. I'm not quite sure I like that. All I did is call that validation. Copilot is set to look at my code. It's not set to look at internet code. So it is what I ultimately want, but I don't kind of want that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to move this into here. Again, I'm not afraid of breaking code, right? That will break code. So what do I need with that? Well, I need iMessage, which means I take a dependency on mediator, right? Which is a little bit mediator. No, not that one. I want that one, mediator.net, right? No, mediator. Again, this is the problem with naming your library after the packet, after the pattern, right? This is not what I want. This is not what I want. This is what I want, right? And all of these are built for that one, not these. So 217 of mediator abstractions is what I want. This is a simpler library, right? So that adds that, and that adds message preprocessor, right? So this validation is built off of mediator the same way my Saga stuff is, right? It's necessary. I have noticed that Friday streams are definitely quieter streams. There's definitely fewer people on a Friday. So maybe Friday does become my bot development stream day. And then I created iValidate, right? So that interface is going to come down there as well. Because that's going to be necessary to be shared. I'm not sure it really flags it in the way. All it is a flag, a flag interface, right? It's an interface that is used just to or signal interface, right? That's the name. A signal interface is just an empty interface used to signal a behavioral availability or to filter this out, right? So this means that this would not filter messages that are not for this, is the idea. So this is great and all, but I kind of need public class fluent validation builder, something like this, right? Constructor takes service collection, public fluent validation builder. Yeah, that works, kind of. That's not really what I want though. So what I'm struggling with here is the fact that I'm trying to think about what I want, and GitHub Copilot is prompting me to do stuff that I kind of want to do, but I don't want to do, right? So I don't want what it's trying to offer right there. So it's distracting me and diverting my attention, and focusing me on the wrong thing in terms of my design here. So what I'm trying to do is I am trying to build something. Let's go to my normal way of doing this, right? Let's go here. Right. I obviously don't want to do this every time, right? So what I'm looking to do is say, okay, builder.services dot add fluent validation configure register. So the problem is that fluent validation does have some dependency injection components. So this is kind of becomes really what I want, and fluent validation is just what I'm using underneath, right? Yeah. So and validators from assembly type of add new support ticket validator, right? Configure dot. That might be all I need right this second, right? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to register this one by doing this, right? So I'm not trying to pretend I'm not using Fluent validation, but in the same, this is really what I'm trying to configure here. I'm using mediator validation. The downside to that is that hides the fact that I'm using Fluent validation and adding Fluent validation to the process, right? So what I might want to do, and this is kind of weird, is configure dot use Fluent validation, right? And that signals that I'm going to use Fluent validation, so therefore Fluent validation would be added to the project. So maybe that's a signal, right? I don't want someone coming in and go, oh, I need Fluent validation. Oh, I just add the project. I'll add the thing, because in the modern way that this lays out, right, that's kind of a an associated package, or it could be, an implicit inclusion. So it might not be obvious off the bat that it's there, and then they add a Fluent validation, then do that, and then they conflict, right? So maybe I do something like that. But I'm aiming at mediator validation first, right? So let's go with that for now. Let's see how it feels. Let's work with that one, right? So ultimately here, public static iService collection, add mediator validation iService collection, and that's going to be an action that takes a Fluent validation builder that's now not a Fluent validation builder, it's a validation builder. Builder. And then this constructs var builder equals new validation builder that takes service collection, right? And again, anyone watching, if you have any questions, you want me to stop and just discuss what I'm doing here, feel free. There's no harm in doing that. I'd like to continue making progress today, but yeah, that's fine. Configure, and then we do configure with builder, and then we return service collection. So that maintains the pattern, right? That allows us to continue doing the dot 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 the fluent the fluent design, or fluid design, whatever it's called. Now we come to this. Let's do that. I'm actually starting to like primary constructors for a lot of these little things, right? It definitely feels good. And it does clean up basic constructors. So this does add Fluent validation, right? And what we could do here is actually, if we made this is the sort of thing, if you made it a library, what you do is, this would not be a method on here. This would be an extension method added by the Fluent validation piece, right? So you could do it that way, but that might be a complexity beyond complex. So you got to be careful that you're not just trying to be clever. And I would suggest, if you find yourself being too clever, rein it back in, make it simpler again, because it does oftentimes bite you. So this is going to do add, this is going to underneath Fluent. I've already got it, yeah. Is it the add? I thought there was an explicit Fluent validation edition. have that up anyway. Yeah, I do. We no longer recommend using this approach. Right, don't want that one. Dependency injection. Configure, add scope. So they just add the validators. So that's okay. So that's... The funny thing here is, I actually want to call that use fluent validation. The amusing thing is, public add validators from assembly is actually not going to be that. It's going to be service collection dot add validators from assembly. Did I call it add validators in there? Yeah, add validators from assembly. This one is actually going to be the fluent validation search one, right? So automatic registration, add validators from assemblies containing, right? And that's going to be assembly. Right. Oh, does it do it? Okay, so it does it a different way there. Okay. Scope by default. Oh, so they do add. Oh, that's going to be messy. That's a no, I don't want to do it that way. That's fluent validation though. Yeah. My concern there is I've stepped on another API, right? I've made that a little bit messier by doing this because um I've not really designed that in the right way. But we're going to go with it for right now. We can always change it later. There's no harm in doing that. Right, so now I'm going to reference that project. We're going to go that way. So that works. Now this one is complaining because this iValidate isn't there. So again, this is kind of shared project stuff, right? These are shared interfaces, shared pieces. You've got to be careful because if you mistakenly reference something that you don't intend, you're now going to pull those into the other layers. So you've got to be careful doing this sort of stuff with shared libraries. I've seen many developers reference a project that then references a project and they get in a loop. And I once watched a person basically write himself into a loop of dependencies. So project A reference project B, reference project C, which reference project A, right? And instead of fixing it, just kept deleting DLLs until he got it to compile. Which to this day, I still don't know how he managed to do it. But he did get it to compile and then quickly committed it with the DLLs. So it became the next person's problem. Right. Because he didn't think about how these dependencies affected him. So, yeah, because what I've done there is I've taken a dependency on that package here, and I've taken a dependency on that package here, right? This has a dependency there, but I've got to be careful that I don't take any, I don't include anything from the here. And especially in the modern tooling where Alt Enter is so easy to press, right? You've got to be doubly careful that you don't include a reference where you don't intend. So, yeah. Sorry, I just dropped something. I'm gonna pick it up. Yeah, just general guidance there because that will get you in a mess, especially doing what I'm doing there. I'm being a little bit too clever by abstracting that, but I do know that I'm about to do this multiple times. So having that there now just gives me while I'm thinking about it, just gives me that opportunity. So how does this relate to adding a new support ticket? This is necessary. These are necessary pieces, and again, these are pieces that yes, I could have tried to prototype, but the requirements are going to guide from here on out, right? I shouldn't do any major architectural work until I come across different database technologies or some other design that I need to work on. So with that in place, I should, without anything else, I should be able to build. I should be able to run. I should be able to get my validation error again. Yeah, no worries, Saurav. Thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate it. I will post in the Discord in the next couple of days. I'll have a look at the site, pick out a couple that look interesting, and we'll see if we can plan a stream in the future to see what we talked about. So, have a great day. Appreciate that. I hope I can continue to help and speak. That would be good. Speaking is good. Okay, so let's remove. Let's not change anything right this second. So I should be able to hit this and still get my validation exception. There we go. No worries. Take care. So we still get a validation error. I wonder if there's a way of capturing that. Is the next statement, right? So if you look at the way ASP.NET does it, it kind of returns it in an error object. VNS1, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, ideas that you want to share on what I'm doing, you want me to look at anything specifically in this, feel free to ask. Okay, so we have some Fluent validation stuff, right? We have some new project stuff. Added Fluent validation, added validator. Didn't test something though. I didn't test something. I need to test something before I go through all that effort of committing. What happens if I edit? Edit does not have a validator in place right this second, and edit shouldn't have a validator because we haven't provided for the facility of editing. But what happens? Does it crash? Right? Because I could have just introduced a bug. Right? I didn't validate that I can still edit. All I said is, hey, if you have the I validate interface, then you should come through this pipeline, right? So hopefully that filters it out enough and doesn't crash because there's no validator possible for everything else. So if I go to work items application, I have other commands, right? I have update, right? So update has no validator around it. So what happens if I go here? So actually I need to get tickets, which won't work because I've got to copy this. Let's go to get tickets, paste there. We don't have assigned to, it's not even a concept, so that's okay. There's our tickets, try to turn it off and back on again, right? Oh. Alright, good. Whoops. Are we sure we had it? We sure we tested this, or did we focus on validation too soon? Right? New customer. Major big customer. Fix now. That, by the way, is how certain companies would use it. This is a bug. It is fixing really quick because they are upset with customer service. Right? Oh no, we have a review date requirement. Review date. Now we get into formatting heck. 12, 12, 23. Okay, so let's get tickets again. Interesting. My unit test pass. Right? Concerning support tickets, when ticket is added. When ticket is added, ticket has added date, ticket has customer name, ticket has description, ticket has review date. Right? So this gets into I've got a feeling I know what it is. But this gets into, okay, where does your work start and where does your work stop, right? What is the validation for this? So, and again, I'm using this as a lesson at the same time as I am genuinely making the mistakes. I'm not trying to be smart and clever and saying, hey, look at this is awesome, right? I'm trying to be honest about how I'm building the software, right? So I'm going to make all the pitfalls, all the errors that I would really make. And that is, I have not analyzed the requirements of the story enough, right? In this case, because we have a dependency, right? No, that's not the one. So I have let's go to the board. As a product owner, I should be able to enter a ticket for support issue, right? A customer name could be a person or a company, free text, a description of the issue, free text. So we've got a validation requirement here. How do we validate this? What are our steps to validate this, right? We oftentimes make stuff up as we go along, which is fine. We development should not be cookie cutter. Here, go do this, go do this. And I'm never, when I'm saying about writing consistent code, I'm never saying write the same code, because what happens is you're going to copy and paste, right? If things are the same time and time again, then it's going to be copy and paste, and you're going to fall foul of the errors, which I did yesterday with the unit tests. But anyway, I haven't specified how I'm going to validate this story. So technically, I have met the requirements because my unit test passed, right? So I could say, yeah, this is done, let's move on. But I clearly just identified it's not there. So I have a story dependency, right? As a product owner, I want to retrieve a list of support tickets. So at this point, you've got to question the creep of, is this and this the same story? Should this be done first over this one, right? In honesty, this one's difficult because you haven't added a ticket yet. So if you haven't added a ticket yet, how can you list the ticket? Well, this can work on a best case scenario. This can work on the data exists, right? This has to work on storing the data, but cannot retrieve the data. So we do have a chicken and egg. And you've got to have a pragmatic conversation again, right? What I should have thought through was this scenario, and I'm going to make this mistake time and time again because I'm wearing all hats, right? And that's why I'm trying to write this. This is why I'm trying to build this software. This is why I'm trying to learn as I go, right? As a product owner, I want to retrieve a list of support tickets, right? I expect I should see customer name, description, review date. Right. So, is there any validation requirements? No. Is there any expectation about data? No, because it would be understood at this point this is all API work. So if QA was QAing this, which they should be involved in a process like this, right? If you have a QA department, a QA group, you should involve them in this process, right? You should involve them in the development discussion. You should involve them with the requirements discussion. Everything in should be QA, DevOps, the entire lot should be part of everything. But realistically, you know, let's as a product owner, I need to be able to see a list of outstanding tickets. For each ticket in the list, I should see. So again, you got to be careful about language. I wrote that. I know what I mean, but I know there's an interpretation there, right? If you see the word outstanding, well, what does that mean? That has a context, right? That has an implication. That implication being that there is a state or something to do with the tickets, right? So I'm going to leave it there as it stands right this second, but that is something again that you should pick up on, you should analyze and discuss and verify so that everyone understands. Okay, outstanding tickets is just open tickets, and we don't have the concept to close, so everything is outstanding by now, right? Later on, the concept of state to the ticket will appear, and then there will be a difference between outstanding versus closed, etc. So yeah, but outstanding will be the default state because it's open, right? So yeah. So realistically, what I need to do here, right, and this is now hard, right, because now I've got a challenge because I've started work on the ad and I've started work on T6 enter support ticket. So I cannot change list, right? I shouldn't change list. I do need to validate that I am adding and I'm confident. So had I done this again, right, I should probably make list stories come before ad stories. So there's my lesson, right? There's a thing I will forget multiple times, and you will see me go, oh, I've said this before, right? I should do the list story first and dummy the data, and then do the ad story, and then the two should combine well, right? So I'm going to commit this. No, I'm not. I'm going to validate why first in this scenario. Why is the name not showing? Now, I believe this is probably because I'm pulling the wrong value from the data, right? I believe it probably is stored. So if I go to Couchbase, go to the buckets, work items, scopes and collections, here you go, documents, right? Tenant information, tickets. So the name is stored, right? I'm confident this store is in a good state, right? It is doing what it needs to do. The problem is the list, right? So the messy solution here would be to now, okay, well, now I need to go and pull a different branch, fix the list story, cherry pick pieces across. I'm going to make a mess. I'm a single person, right? I got to be pragmatic again. I cannot be messing around with Git flow during a phase like this, right? I have to be realistic about what I'm doing. I understand the problem, I understand the challenge. So let me move on and do this in the right order, right? So added fluent validation processor, added extension method, added processor, an extension method. So recently I've been thinking about squash, right? Not the drink, the method of committing things. And now I start to realize why people write lengthy commit notes, right? If you squash your commits, the individual commits are lost. So the notes on individual commits are lost. Considering the number of commits that are did a thing, did something, change this, change that, I can definitely see why lengthier commit notes with larger commits and then squashing would kind of make sense. Added processor extension method for fluent validation. Um, validation. Um, what else did I do there? Updated unit tests. I didn't, don't lie. That's just a formatting change. There's nothing wrong there. Yeah, I don't need to be wordy there. So let's commit and push that. Okay, so now let's go and make a PR. Again, my workflow here is going to have to be pretty tight in terms of my merges and everything like that, because it's just not going to be effective to try and have multiple outstanding branches. It's going to make a mess for me, to be honest. So let's compare, right? We have 25 files changed. We have some project stuff. We have our fluent validation preprocessor, an interface. There's our service collection extensions for validation builder. I'm not going to break that out as its own class right now because, again, I still feel that might be kind of messy. We might want to do something different there. The fluent validation service collection extensions are minimal, so it's hard to say, oh, let's add on top of fluent validation. There's that. We have the verify, so we pass in auth 0. That's going to have to change. That's going to be a bug, so let's create that. Let's go here, go to unresolved, create a new issue as a user. It's a technical requirement, but I should be able to verify my account given a valid auth identity identifier. The auth 0 identifier should come with auth 0 pipe up front. Now we're stripping and that part and parsing. I think auth was my mistake. I don't believe I saw one with auth pipe, but if we do need to be able to say, hey, anything up to the pipe, remove. Parsing the GUID. We should genericize. No. Genericize. There we go. That functionality. Need regex. Tags. What is this? This is bug. Potential. due date, let's say December 15th. Okay, there you go. Okay, so I've tracked that. Add new support ticket. We have the command. We've changed that over to customer name, description, review date, tenant identifier. I did notice while going through this that I am inconsistent on whether I put my tenant identifier first or last. That is something I will have to address. Yeah, here you go. Update. And again, because I changed update and delete, this is kind of a larger than it should be, but considering the changes I was making, it became necessary or more feasible to change them at the same time, because obviously those were complaining about missing fields on ticket, etc. So I changed all these at the same time. But again, I put tenant identifier first on the update, but last on the add. So as I've been working in PHP, I've often criticized PHP because if you look at some of the PHP methods, they are wildly inconsistent, right? I also love how this site design has not changed in decades. So if you do array keys or something like that, right? If you look at the array methods, sometimes the array comes first, sometimes it comes second. There's not always a rhyme or reason to look at this. Everyone I click on is array the first, but I've found that two methods will not have the same signature, and it drives me crazy. So I've got to try and be a little better myself there. Update support ticket. I just changed that context because it's I moved it into the constructor because again it just cleans up this piece, right? It's not a big problem for the actual code. Then customer name, description, review date, etc. Then add new support ticket. Validator is just a validator. Putting that under the validators folder under the commands does make sense because then it's clear, it's right there. It's named the same. Customer name on the view model. Again, on the view model, we added fluent validation. We added the app settings for Couchbase. Oh, I just removed the KV timeout. We modified the ticket document, and then we modified customer name on the patch, on the post. We changed the formatting and changed the fields, and then the parameters, and then in the program we have changed our validation method, and I left those two in there because yeah, not a genius move. So let's go fix that one. That could have okay. Here's another thing, right? That could have meant that my testing was invalid because now my validation may not be there if my extensions don't work the way I intend. So I need to retest that. So yeah, anyone joining, anyone watching today, if you have any questions or thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, feel free to share. It doesn't matter whether you've been doing this for 5 minutes, 5 hours, five decades, right? We can all learn, we can all grow. So I'm always open to discussion about the software. So let's go and try and add invalid ticket. Right. Oh, see, that's how to copy. I did this in Postman the other day, and Postman copied the name and none of the data, none of the headers or anything like that, right? So here's one I made earlier. It is 111 characters. I allow that. So let's have no, doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's now 555 characters, so that's definitely too long. Although, what did I actually manage to break there? Because that looks like that broke something. And then no review date, right? Oh, actually, a review date of last month. Apex, good morning. How are you? That's a long name you got there. It is a long name. Let's see if it still validates or whether it lets me actually add it. There we go. Cannot resolve. See, that's why. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It is Friday. It's been a long week. And that's why I have to retest from root provider because it requires scope service iValidator, which I did not register, apparently. Cannot resolve, IEnumerable, pipeline behavior, add new support ticket command result from root provider because it requires scope service. Now, what did I remove here that made that change, right? So that's essentially what we did in here, right? So that's our pipeline behavior that we added, right? Oh no, why did I add it as transient? That isn't stunning. No. So I am looking at validation today on the API layer, and some unit testing as I move forward with stories, and I'm kind of sharing all the successes and failures along the way. So let's try that again and see if that works as a singleton now. That add validators should work. My concern is that's kind of potentially, it identified it as the fluent validation one. It's not trying to use my own method. So, yes. So we go here. Validation failed. There we go. Okay, so that's why, because I didn't register it as a singleton. So pipeline methods, pipeline behaviors should be singletons, is the way that looks, right? Okay, so the length of customer name must be 100. You entered 110. The length of the description must be 500. You entered 554, right? So this is great, and I will come back around on this, right? This will matter more when we get to the UI. The reason being, right now this does exactly what I want it to do, right? It validates the thing, but it's not very pretty and it's not very formatable. When it gets to the UI side of things, pretty matters. As much as I would like to think that. And I may actually consider, when it comes time to the UI side of things, trying to find some UI UX people that might actually be able to help me. So if that means spending some money on some designs, I will have to do that. Because I am not a UI UX designer, that is for certain. But anyway, that validates still, so that I'm good with that. So let's go and commit that. Removed duplicate registration of behaviors and validators. Commit and push. Okay, let's go back to our review. Able to merge. Okay, so we should scroll down here. We see all the pieces. That shouldn't be there, but we'll figure that out in a second. When when deleting, again, I added some basic tests around the deleting, the updating, etc. So yeah. When tickets updated, updated should not update should not update date added, should update date last updated. Added an extension method to write is, so that I could do is within seconds or minutes or hours of a date. Global usings, much better to use global usings in unit tests. Yes, you've got everything under the sun, but you can see them all the dependencies in one place, and also you can save space in your unit test because they are not taking up space up there. And then our work items application project. So I think that is good. So let's create the pull request. That change should be there, which I'm going to validate once more before I. So in work items, program CS. Here you go. That still says that's there, doesn't it? I did push it. Huh. Interesting. Pull requests. Code. Let's go check that branch and see if that code still exists there. Source. Work items. Program CS. Still there. But I pushed them, right? I pushed removing that. No. How did they get... Am I going crazy? Did I do something completely different? Now I've got no. It's a source. Work items. Program CS. Add flip. Remove duplicate. Extensions validation. Service collection extensions. Oh. I fixed that, is what I actually did. I made that a singleton, but I forgot to actually remove those lines. Actually, I'm not messing around with. I could pull that commit back, amend it, re-update it. Again, I'm okay with the with the mistake being in the code. For the sake of spending time doing that, over time I should probably learn to do that, to be able to amend commits and change them and push and force the push to overwrite the history. It's probably a useful skill to have, and from a clean repository standpoint, more effective. You don't want your repository littered with actually remove the duplicate this time, right? Actually remove the duplicate lines, previous commit, fixes transient to single on the registration, singleton on the registration. So I will have to spend some time doing that in the future, right? But I caught it. It does humanize you a little to commit. Yes, I caught it. I figured it out. So my pull request there, and this is probably a good point to move on. So again, you notice because I called it T6 underscore enter underscore support underscore ticket, the branch name, I get spaces there, so I get the ticket number and then a rough description. It does humanize you a little to commit when you made a mistake though, so in a group setting it could be okay. Yeah, it's okay to admit a mistake. Yeah, in your own project, this is a good point to amend. Yeah, it should be something I do amend those things, so I'm not littering. Those things happen all the time. right? Catching it is the most important thing, but learning how to, or getting into the practice of, oh, I need to amend a commit, right? I work with a guy who is absolutely incredible at Git. Like, does things, it like commits things all the time, but then moves the commits around and squashes them and changes them up and stuff, and is just so confident with that that I do envy that ability. Git is something that I've used for years, and I don't consider myself. I consider myself competent enough to do this sort of stuff, but doing that sort of stuff is it's an art form. So anyway, review changes. I have done. Okay. Merge pull request. Confirm the merge. Go to main. Check out. Okay. So with that in place, delete the branch. I do not want to leave a mess again. With that in place, we now have add. The add story is done. So we can go to here, and we can move that to done. And now we can move this to open. So that is where I'll pick up next time. So today, obviously, I have gone through some validation stuff. That was a useful piece to go through. I'm not sure I like the hidden nature of it, but it kind of, you have to make it obvious. You have to make it you have to put the pieces in to get the validation to work. So it's not like you can miss it, and the folder structure supports it. So I'm happier with that. So I'm going to finish up here a few minutes earlier than I would normally, because I can hear a dog that needs to go out. I will continue my daily streams 7 or 9 a.m. Monday to Friday as long as I can. Obviously, with the holidays coming up, that's probably going to change a little bit in the coming weeks. Next Thursday and Friday, I am on PTO, so I will probably have a longer stream next Thursday and Friday morning. But other than that, I may be back over the weekend. I might do bot work and stuff on the weekend. So I do want to put some ChatGPT stuff into my bot. So I probably will do some of that over the weekend at some time randomly. So yeah. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's see. Apex, are you starting up your stream, or have you started up your stream? If you would like us to come over there, because that is where I will head. Anyway, if not, we will raid over to someone, and then I will catch up with everyone else later. So, just starting. Well, we will come over to you. If you get the stream started up, I will finish up here, and yeah, we'll. Apex is working on a game in Godot and building up some, in a similar manner to this, building up some groundwork, building up the pieces in a great way. So let's go over there, and I will be back again on Monday. If you haven't already, join the Discord. I will post when I'm going live there. And yeah, so thank you very much. Have a great weekend if I don't see you again, and I'll see you again soon. Later all.